Hello everyone. You didn't expect to see me back here. Well, I am. Back here for another episode of your favorite secret talk show. I'm here with my guest, the creator, the rapper, the musician, Jamal, also known by your stage name, Jarius. Jamal, welcome to the show.
All right, thank you.
You are a Toronto rapper. Do you operate exclusively in Toronto, or do you also move around? Do you travel to record or perform?
I like to stay within Toronto at least because, it's kind of hard to travel all the time. But shows-wise, I've done shows like in Ottawa, Montreal. If you want to get like your name out there, you gotta go bounce around a few places. So you gotta kind of get out of your comfort box.
Yeah.
And then more opportunities will show up, right? So.
In terms of recording, do you stay in Toronto? Is your production
Yes.
house here?
I mean, because what you do is you kind of give yourself some options.
Yeah.
You don't want to go through a bunch of you don't want to go through a bunch of studios because some of them have different quality. So it's kind of best to stick to one or two that you might like, and then kind of keep the same sound.
And do you ever travel abroad to perform?
Not yet. That's also definitely a goal I plan to do next year actually.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Yeah. Do you think that Toronto, and I guess Canada in general, is a brain drain when it comes to the arts? Because there's this sentiment that's pretty mainstream that if you want to make it, you have to go down south to the US. Do you think that's true?
I believe it's true. The reason why is because I feel like in Canada, you gotta go by population wise too, right? The states has around 300 million people. Only have 30 million, right? Also too, there are a lot more opportunities down there, unfortunately, because there's more people trying to do music, so it's easier to engage with the crowd. They're a little bit more receptive, I have to say. And then usually Toronto kind of just follows along, or even Canada itself usually.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I think so, to a certain extent. Because there's also this change that's coming. And that's with all these big digital media companies like Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube.
Apple
Do you
Music.
use any of those apps to distribute your music?
So I used to have on SoundCloud and YouTube actually. It's kind of like the OGs you can kind of say for music. Well, SoundCloud, there's still a few rappers who do get a little popular from there. Like Lil Pump did, Triple X did.
Yeah.
So I thought you can still kind of get out there.
Yeah.
What I realized is a lot of people back in the day used to be about quantity over quality for music, but now it became down to if you have one hit track.
Yeah.
Now it's you can kind of thrive on that one hit track for a certain period of time.
Gucci Gang.
Yeah.
Gucci Gang, Gucci Gang.
And then you listen to the album now, right? His latest one is Harvard Dropout, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just you'd spend another Gucci Gang kind of feel, but
it's the same thing over and over again. But yeah, no, that's interesting because Spotify and SoundCloud, they're kind of eliminating these borders. You don't have to necessarily put yourself out there, go sell mixtapes on the street to actually get people to listen to your music. Do you think that's going to benefit Toronto artists?
As I guess you can say, as technology progresses, right, we become more technology dependent.
Yeah.
So you can say yes, it actually does help them in a way. Not in terms of revenue wise, that's a whole different case. But in terms of getting yourself out there, I would say yeah, because now it's an easier way to distribute your music compared to going from one source. Because a few years ago, usually YouTube will be the number one source for everybody, really.
Yeah.
Right. But now you can say you got Spotify, Apple Music. We're willing to put your music out there, and you can finally get yourself out there a little bit more. So as long as we kind of keep around this whole social media and very being tech savvy, especially around our age group, then you should definitely hit a wave if you put your music out there.
Speaking of Spotify, this happened very recently in the news. You must have heard of it. There's the Eminem's publisher, 8 Mile Style, their case versus Spotify. Did you hear about that?
Vaguely. I kind of skipped it over a little bit.
Right. It's fascinating. I guess for everyone that hasn't heard about this at home, it's a case involving two major parties. 8 Mile Style, which is Eminem's publisher, they own licenses and distribution rights to all of Eminem's music. Most of Eminem's music. There's, I think, 243 tracks. They're suing Spotify, who are the behemoth, the overlords of the digital music streaming industry. They're suing them for willful copyright infringement. Eminem's publisher is basically coming out with a two-pronged argument. The first one pertains to the copyright infringement. They're basically saying like, hey, there are 243 songs in your catalog that belong to Eminem that you did not get a license for to distribute. So 220 million people worldwide have access to Eminem's music, and you don't have the appropriate license to be distributing it to those people. You're making a lot of money off of it, and we're not getting anything. I guess the question that comes out of this is like, how do you protect yourself as an independent artist from, I guess, these bigger organizations that are just trying to take advantage of smaller artists?
Yeah, so that is becoming a very big issue now. So that's why you see these like, okay, the best example is, I guess the younger rappers, I guess like, Lil Pump, Smoke, those kind of guys, right? When you look at the venues they use, right, you can kind of tell who actually makes like the big bucks actually, right? Because usually the bigger the venue usually means the more people that actually come in, should be the more money, right? So that's why you always see Drake at like Molson Amphitheater, or like Future like at Staples or something like that, right? Because they actually make a lot of money, right? And then look at the other artists who are coming up like Lil Yachty and those guys. They're like in like the smaller venues and stuff like that. So you kind of know who's really making the big money in the music industry, right? But in terms of the distribution, on all that stuff, the copyrights, it's like companies are finding ways now and loopholes where they kind of trap artists now, where it's like they kind of take more of the profit compared to the other artists. So I know my friend, because he's in the music industry, he's telling me this, how they kind of do it, right? So it's like the label, so let's say someone presents like a track, right? Puts it on Spotify, for example. The producer gets about, we'll say, 10% of the music, right? Profit. The artist himself, maybe 20%, I would say. And the other 70%, we think it goes to the label.
The record label.
Right, exactly. So you see all these artists, flaunt their money, stuff like that, and usually it's actually renting money from the labels themselves who give it to these artists to flaunt because that's their style, right? So when you really think about it, is that most of these artists that you see, rapping stuff like that, majority of them are really broke actually.
They're not earning nearly as much as their record label is.
Not at all. Even J. Cole even exposed them. These 9% of these rappers are not actually making that kind of money.
No, I remember he sat down with Lil Pump after Lil Pump became famous, and he was like, "Man, you just have to never stop performing. Like actually just go out and perform, and that's where you're gonna make your money from."
That's actually how artists make their money. Is actually from tours. Right. They get a little bit of money from streams, but you have to get like a lot of streams to make money off that.
It's really interesting because when you think of Spotify and all that stuff, like the record labels are making all that money. Because even the second part of the claim by 8 Mile Style, it's a constitutional issue. So a lot of legal scholars are looking towards it as a precedent-setting question, because what Eminem's publisher is saying is that there's this act that was passed last year. It was called the Music Modernization Act of 2018. In that act, there's a portion of it that pertains to the limitation of liabilities of digital music producers, and basically says that any copyright infringement that was done before December 31st, 2017 has to have been claimed by December 31st, 2017. So in this case, Eminem's publisher can't claim any damages or attorney fees from before December 31st, 2017 because that's legislation now. So basically what they're coming out and saying is that's actually not constitutional at all. It's unconstitutional under the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution because it's taking away their substantive right to due process. So it's interesting because if you look at the groups that lobbied for that law, it was the record label companies. It was Universal, Sony, Warner. It was Spotify. It's really interesting. Because I don't know if you remember the LimeWire days.
Oh my god.
LimeWire.
Who does not remember LimeWire?
But do you remember when it got closed down? When those streams got closed down?
Yes.
It's because we started seeing like all these lawsuits that are coming from these major record label companies, which was basically these record label companies coming out and saying like, hey, you don't have, distribution rights, or you can't license this music, and they're suing kids. They're literally suing kids for like the maximum allowable amount, and they basically got these websites shut down for copyright infringement. Now, if you look at Spotify and you look at their equity shareholders, it's these major companies.
Yeah, of course.
So it's all like in a circle. The money stays within those 3 major companies, 4 major companies, and what's your take on that? Do you join them? Do you fight them?
So that's the tricky thing. Because with these big labels, usually when they distribute your music, they do over broad, they have easier access, getting it out there compared to an independent label, right? So that's why even some big artists now kind of have like their own label. So for example, Dreamville, right? Yeah. With J. Cole, Cactus Jack, Travis Scott. So what they do is they are signed to like major labels, but they also have their own because they get profit from their own artists and stuff like that, right? So technically speaking, if you want your own rights to your own music all the time, stuff like that, technically speaking, independent is the way to go. It's just hard for you to get a bigger buzz. But that also comes with talent too. Chance the Rapper is probably the best example for independent artists. I remember listening to this one Wiz Khalifa interview, and he's saying that making music in this industry, it takes a very long time. And this is coming from the guy who made Black and Yellow, right? Yeah. Because so he even said to himself, "Is like, yo, we're not gonna see money for years." Yeah. Right. Because labels, what they tend to do is they kind of like delay the payments on top of that. Yeah. And it's just like to make it so much more hard for you to even get your money. Yeah. I remember even Meek Mill saying that he first started actually making money from music. I think it was after Dreams and Nightmares, I think he said, after his second album. That's when he just said like, yeah, I actually finally started making money. And he had like a ton of mixtapes beforehand. Yeah. Went on tour and stuff like that. So I hear people who's like, I want to do music, making a little quick money grab, stuff like that. And that's the most stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Like anybody who's in music will fully tell you like that's probably the most stupidest idea I've ever heard. Yeah. Because you're not gonna see any revenue, like I said, for years. And these are coming from, the biggest artists in the world. Yeah. Right. So if you think that you can make a mixtape, like 1-2 mixtape, make a lot of money. Yeah. You have no idea how the music industry actually works, man. Yeah.
It's a struggle. Yeah. So what do you think? What's next for you as a rapper?
Well, for me as a rapper, I feel like I said, now it's became more about quality over quantity. Yeah. So now what I'm trying to do, if anything, is I'm actually going to try and make like a small mixtape of songs, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to produce it. Take my time, make sure it gets engineered properly before I release it. Because, like I said, I feel like nowadays it's all about how like you sound, and like first impressions are very important. So I'm gonna take my time with my next coming tape. Focus on it like really well, and also might do a little bit of podcasting on the side too. Actually, it's kind of an idea. I am kind of flowing around a bit, and I'll probably just take it from there. Really. So
for sure, it's a very nice way to wrap up this segment. Thank you for tuning in this week. If you want to give any message to the 3 viewers that we have, you can go ahead. There's a camera right behind me. Go for it.
All right. Well, I mean, if you're in the music industry, just keep your heart at it, man. Keep hustling. If you got dreams, don't let anyone talk you down. Just keep going, and always do your best every day.
It's a very wonderful message. Thank you for listening. I feel like I need like an outro song right now, and I'm really feeling "Lose Yourself" by Eminem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the song, but we're just gonna enjoy it personally. I'm gonna censor it in the final video because that's copyright 101. You're listening to Spotify, so okay Google, play "Lose Yourself" by Eminem.
All right, "Lose Yourself" by Eminem.